but I'll also talk with you about abortion because that is another thing that I like talking about. Because I don't necessarily see the value in living human cellular life. I
Um,
think so. Sperm and egg are human cells that are alive. Are
they're
capable.
haploid,
Yes.
so they're not their own individual human being.
Okay. A zygote is also not yet its own individual
A
human
zygote is diploid,
being.
though. A sperm and
I'm
egg is
aware. I'm aware of the difference in a haploid and a diploid cell.
yeah. So
Um, right. During the process of meiosis, I understand.
yeah, so I would say that it's just the stage of life. Adults aren't actually fully developed until the age of 25.
Right, but we're biologically independent.
A newborn isn't biologically independent,
It
but
is.
you wouldn't, a newborn is biologically independent. They
Yes,
can
it is
feed
able to carry out all of its.
themselves,
That's not what biologically independent means. When we're talking about biological independence, we mean able to carry out biological processes on its own. It is able to
such as
digest food
feeding
on its
itself.
own. It is able to respire on its own. It's
Okay,
not
so
feeding itself, it's
okay,
digesting
so what
food that it
happens? Wait,
eats.
hold on. What happens if the mother or the father does not feed it? It dies, right?
Well,
So
yes, that
therefore, it's
happens to
not,
anybody, but what
and
we're
it
talking
cannot
about
feed
is,
itself, and it
but it
cannot feed
cannot,
itself.
but it cannot digest its own food in certain stages of development in the womb.
But if you don't feed
The,
or
the
you don't
biological,
clean,
the biological
it's not.
process is.
It's not going to be able to hold on. A fetus in the womb is able through the umbilical cord to eat and to grow.
It does not
You know that,
digest.
right? And share, but it's still growing and it's still alive. A baby outside the womb cannot even do that. At least inside the womb, it's able to feed itself and nurture itself through the umbilical cord.
That is quite
I think that's
literally
being kind of hypocritical.
okay. What person does the umbilical cord belong to?
Nobody's disagreeing. It's the mother, even though it's not
So it's
detached.
not
It's
feeding
not
itself. The
attached to the
mother is
mother.
still feeding it.
Sure, but the mother is still going to have to feed it outside the womb.
Right, but what we're talking about is eating is not the biological process we're discussing. Digestion is. So in both
Okay,
cases,
but
it
you
is the
cannot.
mother feeding the child.
Yeah, but you
In the
cannot
first
have
case,
digestion. You cannot have digestion without eating. You're not going to digest, thin air. You can digest, fat cells, but that's only for so long until you're gone.
putting food in your mouth and swallowing it is not a biological metabolic process.
It's a
Di-
mechanical process.
right, we're talking about
So
biological independence,
you're missing the
metabolic
point.
processes.
But you can't have a metabolical chemical process without something being in it for B to happen.
I understand that.
So
But
we
that's
have
not
to be a
that's
little
not the
consistent.
process we're discussing. The process we're discussing is being able to carry out those biological processes independent of like there being food to digest or there being air for it to breathe. Sure, if you put anyone in a vacuum with no oxygen, they won't be able to breathe. Assuming there is air to breathe, the
You
average
can't have
person
A
will be
without
able
B,
to
though. You
respire.
cannot have A without B. You can't. You can't. It's impossible. You can't have A
Okay,
without B.
again, so what we're saying is people generally have the ability to respire, to breathe. If you put them in an environment with no air, they do not have that ability because there is no air
So you can't
available.
have A without B. Thank you.
You're completely misunderstanding. They
No,
still have that
I'm trying to
capability,
get it to be
so
consistent.
we're assuming that the conditions exist for them to carry out that process
Yeah,
to
and if
determine
they
whether or
don't,
not
they'll
they are
die.
capable of doing so.
And if they don't, they die.
Right. A fetus is
There you go.
not capable of digestion on its own. A
Neither
baby
is a newborn
is.
baby. You
A
can't have
newborn
A
baby is
without B.
absolutely capable of digestion on its own.
Okay, and when it eats all its fat cells, it starves to death and it dies. Great.
That's not what digestion is. Digestion is processing food, not eating food.
So I agree. A digestion happens in the stomach, but you can't digest something that isn't there.
It feels like you're being very purposefully obstinate. I think you understand what I'm trying to say. The process we're talking about is
You
not
can't have
eating
A
food, the
without B.
process is digesting food. You saying you
What
can't have
if
A without B does not affect the fact that a fetus cannot digest
Okay, so
or
what are
carry out
you
its
going
metabolic processes on its
so
own.
the fat cells are gone. There's no food in the stomach.
Thank you,
What is the
Jay.
baby going to digest?
Again, we're assuming the conditions exist for the process to occur.
think we're just going around in circles.
We are, because you're very purposefully missing my point.
No, I just think you're just stuck on something that you can't have A without B. That's what I think.
Okay, so by your not respire, because if you put them in a vacuum, they will not be able to breathe. So therefore, people cannot respire.
I don't think people can breathe in outer space without a helmet.
Okay, so people cannot breathe then,
Not
because
in
they
outer
they
space,
have to
no.
have air in order to respire, so people cannot breathe. That is your logic right now. What I'm saying is people can breathe if
Like,
they have air, therefore people can breathe.
can people breathe without a helmet in outer space? Because they don't have A, they don't have air, therefore they can't
You're
breathe.
correct. So nobody can breathe. That is your conclusion.
If you're in space without a helmet, yes, nobody can breathe.
Nobody can breathe ever because you can't breathe without air, so therefore you cannot breathe. Is
Are
your
you always,
logic.
wait, are you always without air? Are you always without
Are
H2O?
are you always without food?
No.
Or are you assuming that conditions exist and you have food or air? So when you're talking about the ability to breathe or digest, you assume that the conditions
Oh
exist.
my Lord, have mercy. So you wait, so you can have A without B. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, robot.
That's not your.
Thank you very much, robot. It's hilarious, bro. We're going around in circles. Oh, it's hilarious.